All DC disconnects are required to have a label stating photovoltaic DC disconnect and have a warning label stating warning, electric shock hazard. Do not touch terminals. Terminals on both the line and the load sides may be energized in the open position. Now you know by now that the modules will still be producing power on the one side of the disconnect. But there are two ways in which the output from a DC disconnect can continue to be energized even after it's been turned off. From a firefighter's perspective, they both matter and should be understood. First, the inverter uses large capacitors to turn the DC power into usable AC power. When the DC disconnect is moved to the off position, the DC power coming from the roof is stopped at that point, and the inverter thinks it's nighttime because it doesn't see any DC power coming off the roof. However, the capacitors inside the inverter can continue to hold a significant charge, and it can take up to 5 minutes for them to bleed down. During that time, those wires from the inverter up to that disconnect will still be energized. Additionally, the modules on the other side are still producing power. So you can see that that disconnect, when it's shut off, there's power on both sides of that disconnect for up to 5 minutes. So be cautious on both sides of a DC disconnect, even after it's turned off.
An AC disconnect can be either a breaker in the main electrical panel or an external disconnect. Either way will shut off the power to the inverter. So in summary, the operational goal is to shut down the system, and there are three potential ways of doing that, and either way will work. Number one, the main PV system breaker in the electrical panel. Number two, if there is an external AC disconnect, shut it down. Or three, all DC disconnects, if more than one, found on the system. But the bottom line is that if you see a disconnect, shut it off.